Welcome to another episode of Home Sweet Home. My name is Rod McCall.
Hey, Rod, I'm Bryce. Hey, everybody, I'm Bryce Runge.
Oh, yes. And what a fantastic, we're lucky to have you, or I'm lucky to have you as my partner on this.
You are lucky to have me.
I know. I mean, it could be a lot worse.
It could, what? Wow, I didn't think you were going to go that way. Okay, all right.
Well, just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip that started from this tropic port, admired this mighty ship.
Gilligan's Island?
It was only a 3-hour cruise.
It was not a cruise. It was a 3-hour tour.
Oh, okay.
Was it not?
Yes, you're right. It was
a 3-hour tour. I don't know the whole song.
Okay, because you're really dating yourself? Because I wonder how many people listen and go, I don't even know what Gilligan's Island is.
Well, before our podcast started, I Googled it and listened to the soundtrack. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not that old. You're older than me, dude.
By only a couple of weeks.
At least 10 years. Okay, more like 7, but...
Man, you tell all kinds of stories.
Story. I love telling stories.
Really?
So, yeah.
Do you have a favorite story?
I have so many. You're putting me on the spot.
No?
I can't think of one right now. I do love telling stories.
Yeah.
Whenever I speak, I tell stories.
Okay.
I think that's how you captivate your audience.
Okay.
You draw them in, especially if it's a personal story or whatnot, right?
Did you grow up hearing a lot of stories? Did your dad, aunts, uncles, cousins?
I mean, yeah,
especially the older ones.
Yeah, we heard stories of different family members or things that happened or occurred or whatever, right? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I asked because...
Where are you going with this story?
Well, just sit right back and I'll tell you.
Okay.
I'll tell you a story. No, I was reading this article and it popped up on my news feed, many months ago.
Okay.
And it was about storytelling and the role that storytelling has in a positive impact on your life. Now, the lady that wrote it, she's a doctor. Her name is Robin Fivish. She's a professor at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And so she was talking about the role and impact that storytelling has on life. And I really liked it because that's how I tell stories.
Right.
Everything is a relatable story.
Yeah.
When I was first teaching, I was teaching U.S. history, and I was telling story after story after story. And after class one day, one of the kids came up and he goes, McCall, I don't know how to take notes with you. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, the teacher always just says, write this down, write this down, write this down. And you don't do that. You just tell a story.
Yeah.
Love the story, but how the heck am I supposed to take notes? And it really made me chuckle. And because I do. Everything is a story.
Yeah.
And I come from a long history of storytellers. Some might call them BS artists, but they were, both my grandparents told stories.
Right.
I mean, they were fun stories.
Oh, well, we've heard them too. Like my granddad said.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. Yeah, because I got a lot of granddaddy stories. Even if they weren't told by granddaddy said them. In fact, one time my dad goes, after he overheard me talking to some of my students, he goes, I sure would like to meet this granddaddy of yours.
Oh, that's funny.
But I had a lot of my uncles, especially my mom's brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They were storytellers.
Oh, yeah.
And they could take the most basic, boring story and make it funny, and you're just rolling.
Right.
You're grabbing your side because you're laughing so hard. And I mean, that's how I grew up.
Yeah.
And so as I grew into adulthood and got into teaching, well, even before teaching, I just tell stories.
Yeah.
And I love telling stories. And, you get with different friends, and especially when we've had some of your friends on from your youth.
Or,
when my little sister was on, or I'll go back home or I'll get together with my friends when, growing up, and we will just go one story after another. And we may have told that story 20 times, but we're going to tell it again.
Oh, yeah.
And it might be a little more embellished than the last time.
I was just about to say, they continue to get more and more embellished the more it's told. But it's an all good. It's all fun. Yeah, I grew up, that. And then with the three older brothers, when we get around family members, families, our family in Illinois, and I mean, all the stories just start to roll. And it is such a good time. And I miss a lot of that. And I know that we haven't, a lot of us, like my cousins were in town. Shout out to John and Joanne.
Hey, by the way, thanks, Joanne, for listening.
Yes.
Bryce told me that you listened, so yay.
Yes. And I did tell him you have a bone to pick with him. But anyways, you are my favorite cousin. Other cousins, other relatives listen. Sorry. No, just kidding. But no, I love that. Mm-hmm. There's so much value in the storytelling, and I do that with Braddock's, and Braddock's will bring up, hey, tell that one time, tell them about that one time that or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, all right. It's yeah.
Well, in this, in the article, the professor, she's talking about how the value that it has, that it is an important part of family, that it is how we're able to draw connections to places and things and events in the past, provide meaning to them, why we do this.
Right.
Why we have family traditions. Well, it all started way back when. But it gives purpose to what we do.
Right.
And so I really, as I'm reading through this article, she provides a lot of good information. And she basically makes an argument that storytelling is basically a cornerstone, or what she calls a pillar to a meaningful life.
Yeah.
And, I would have to, I really would agree with this. Because as I look back, I really wish I had been older when my grandparents were alive. Because I think I was in 7th grade when, my first grandmother died before I was born. And her husband, my grandfather, he died when I was in 7th grade.
Yeah.
Well, when my dad's mom and dad were still alive, I wasn't smart enough to pay attention to all their stories. And I regret them now.
Yeah.
I regret that now.
Right.
I don't regret them.
No, yeah,
but I regret that I wasn't, because again, I was a teenager. And when you're a teenager, you're filled with a lot of stupidity.
Yeah.
You're things that you think are important that really aren't that important.
Right.
But they would, some of their stories I remember telling. My one grandfather, he was he tells 2 stories that I remember, but it's, it shows his silliness, his quirky side.
Yeah.
Because he talked about, we're talking the 1920s, and he and his brother would sneak into people's homes to call girls. Well, they would sneak in people's homes because only the wealthy in the 1920s really had telephones in their homes.
Yeah.
And so then they were calling rich girls because, again, calling family to family.
Yep.
And it just made me laugh. I'm thinking, here's my grandfather, and, upstanding pillar of society, and he's breaking into people's homes to call girls. And, you're as a teenage boy, I don't know, I guess I wasn't even teenage because I was, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah.
But it was a funny story. We would get together. My mom's brothers would tell some of the most funny stories of their growing up. Because there was 5 brothers.
Wow.
And my mom was the youngest, and she had a sister that was the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
And then 5 boys in the middle. So 5 boys growing up on a farm, poor.
Yeah.
But, and we're talking again, in the 20s and 30s and 40s, because they all served. They were all drafted during World War II.
Oh, wow.
And so, but it's funny listening to them tell the stories.
Yeah.
And so when we get together, my sisters and I, we tell stories about, things that happened. And when I'm teaching, to this day, I'm still telling stories.
Yeah.
And because I think it provides that, like I was saying, the connection, the purpose, the meaning.
Right.
I love history because it's a story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know that people gather to listen to my stories like I used to at my with my uncles, but I do believe that storytelling is a key part.
Right. Oh, I agree with you 100%. I agree with you. Yeah, like I said, going back, I think everything, at the end, it's all a story, and I don't know, it's just, not sure where I'm going with it.
That's all right. Well, in the article, they talk about that sometimes we can even change our stories. We can create stories that affirm a positive value, create, some kind of meaning or purpose, which I think, when you and I have both done a lot of public speaking, and we share our story.
Yeah.
But we use that story to deliver a message.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when we're doing it that way, it's more, again, delivering a message, encourage people, to educate people, to inspire. Right. And that's, I think that's definitely the value in that storytelling. And when you're talking on that platform. Yeah.
Well, and it's, you and I have faced a lot of challenges in life. And if we can add humor to it, okay, we both sat through a lot of convocations at school.
Yep.
And they always bring in guest speakers, and some of them are really good. We've listened to John Gordon. I'm not plugging John Gordon, but he's really a fun and entertaining person to listen to.
Yeah.
And he talks, but his stories are funny, but they have a meaning or a purpose.
Right.
And that's kind of what, they're saying, is that you can take these stories and make it have meaning.
Right. Yeah. Make them, what I like is making those stories come alive. And your listeners can actually, you draw them in. It's like they're a part, they could visualize that. Right. And so, and there's humor, and there's some sad things, and right. It's a combination of all those things to really draw those people in, especially when you're trying to inspire change and you're trying to cultivate, a change, if you will.
And I think that's really what the author of this article is talking about.
Yeah.
That stories are a way of connections.
Yeah.
And we all have stories. Mm-hmm. And not every story is going to have a happy ending.
Right.
But if you tell the story long enough, or if you extend out the time period,
right,
then maybe you can have it.
Yeah.
And I like, it's fun listening. I don't know. I like to get together with people, when you're going out for dinner and you're hearing a story, you're talking about, just something with your daily life. Mm-hmm. And, we'll sit together in the faculty lounge. This semester, it seems like there's about 8 of us that all have lunch at the same time.
Cool.
And so it is cool, and it's a lot of fun, and a lot of stories going on about, something that happened in the classroom, and many times it's funny.
Right.
I mean, it is your belly laughing.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
anyway, I like the stories that we tell. Sometimes, again, when you're feeling frustrated, listening to somebody else's story, telling about their day or something that funny or comical that happened in their classroom. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what TV is all about, telling a story.
Yeah.
Movies are telling stories. Even songs are telling stories.
Yep.
And so being able to have that in your life, I will agree. I'm gonna go and support the author that it does make life more enjoyable, more meaningful, and I'm glad that. Because I sometimes wonder, do we take it for granted?
Yeah.
The people in our lives and that's why I like this podcast platform.
Yeah.
It is a way to talk and tell stories that can then be recorded forever.
Right.
Because again, as I mentioned before, I miss, all of my uncles have passed away. My grandparents have all passed away.
Yeah.
So the idea of being able to hit them up again. I mean, my parents are, they're getting up there.
Yeah.
And they aren't going to be around much longer for more stories to tell. I mean, my dad with dementia, he can't tell stories anymore.
Yeah.
And my mom can to a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I've got a little window to keep, plugging away and pulling more.
Right.
But I think that the more we can talk to each other, share your day. Because when you share your day with, your significant other, you're sharing a story.
Right.
When you're a kid, sometimes I would be so excited. I come home from school and mom would go, "How was your day?" "Well, let me tell you." But then...
So it started at a young age with you.
Well, yeah, that's true. But at the same time, though, I mean, how many times does Radix come home and, "Hey, how was your day?" "Okay." "What'd you do today?" "Nothing."
Had lunch.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely pulling teeth.
And I mean, because I know that I also responded that way as well.
Sure. Yep.
But you're, communicate. Life is more fulfilling when we are talking to each other.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Storytelling or whatever it might be.
Yeah. It's such a fun... It's just a great experience, and when you're hearing those stories, and like I said earlier, you're passing those stories on, with your granddad, your uncles, they passed them. Now you continue on to share those stories, and we've shared many of them on here, and I get to do that with my kids, and yeah, I got a lot of that growing up. It's with specifically about family and whatnot, but like you said, it's hard to go back and document those things when the people have passed on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like having your sister on here, or having my mom on here, and now we get to document that. Like it's already been documented.
It's recorded for posterity.
Yeah, and so it's not the whole life story, but it's a piece of it. And I've tried to document things in here, and then with my book, there's tons of stories in that. And there's a lot of them that are directly related to family or my parents. And so, but I've learned that from them telling me, or it was a shared experience or whatnot. And so,
well, and you're right, because in the book I wrote, again, telling a story, and it's a one long story, but it's also got a lot of bits and pieces.
Right.
And I sometimes have found myself going back through and remembering some of the fun things. Not everything in the story that I share it's not all bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the ending was bad, but there was a lot of happy moments
Right.
with Eric and I.
Mhm.
And so it is remembering, I guess that's one of the key things that I love about a story is you're jogging your memory.
Yeah.
And in fact, the last thing that this lady says in her article, she says that through hearing, listening, and sharing other stories, we come to tell our own stories in new ways that reframe our own stories to create more redemptive meanings.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that, yes, sometimes so I guess that's maybe a positive when I tell the same story more than once.
Yeah. I think it is.
Okay. Is that like why it's fun to watch a TV show or a movie more than once?
Yes. It's probably why I watch Tommy Boy 5 million times. When you are, and that's why I have become so encouraged to share my story, probably the same as you, is that when we share, now going on a different, it's awesome to get around the family and share the history with your family and all those things, but like what we're doing here on this podcast or through our books or through our speaking or whatever, when we share our story, ultimately we're empowering others, we're encouraging others. And I get great pleasure out of being able to be an open book and share that story, because through our story, we could help others heal. We could encourage and inspire others to overcome the challenges that we've been through in life.
Okay.
We're not just harboring that and, containing that all within ourselves. We've stepped up and out and said, here's our story. Let it encourage and inspire others. That's kind of why we started this podcast, to use our stories, to share our stories, to help families thrive, to help people overcome the challenges that happen in life. And it's going to continue. You and I are both, it's not if, it's when we encounter challenges, right? We're just going to add that. It's a new chapter to our story. And then hopefully we get to turn around and share that with others or the next generation, to inspire and create change and whatever, to lift others up and
maybe make life for other folks more enjoyable and meaningful.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So I got one thing that just popped in my head. I don't know if you heard it.
Nope. I didn't hear it. Okay.
There it is. Okay, sorry, that was really crazy. Anyway, no, one of the things that I was wondering in listening to what you were saying, could we also use stories to keep people alive?
100%.
Because when I tell stories about Eric, does that help him stay alive? When we tell stories about family members, are we keeping them alive?
Like keeping their story alive?
Well, yeah. I mean, their memory.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because if we are, then maybe that's a positive as well.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't thought about that. But as I was listening, because I do love to tell stories about my family and things that we've done.
Yeah.
Especially when we get together. And so anyway, I don't know, just a thought. So.
No, looking at you and as emotional as it is, yes, absolutely. You are keeping his memory, his story alive through what you're doing. Eric's Place of Hope.
True. Well, that's
you're
good.
keeping the legacy going. You're cultivating a legacy of hope through his story.
Well, and that's kind of what I was wondering. And, but it's not just his story, but as we tell, stories about our family, especially after they have passed on.
Right.
Are we keeping the happy memories alive?
Yeah.
Like I said, one of my other stories that my grandfather used to tell was they would, him and his brother Charlie, I don't remember ever meeting him, but they both must have been some hellions back in their days, because my grandfather tells the story of on their way home from school one day, they stopped in a neighbor's orchard and they ate an apple, and one apple became 2 and 2 became 10, and they ate so many that they started puking, and they puked all the way home. And then when they got home, well, I guess my great-grandmother had dinner ready. Well, I'm not hungry. I guess my great-grandfather says, you are going to eat. And so they tell the story of them, having to shovel in food, having puked from eating so many apples. Anyway, again, funny stories that provide insight.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Because you think of certain people when you see them, as a kid, your parents, when you see your grandparents, and you don't realize that, well, they were, 16, 17, 18 years old once, and that they did the same kinds of silly things that we did,
right,
or are doing. So again, stories, I love stories.
Yeah.
I don't know that I will ever not be a storyteller.
Yeah. Well, you and I are both really animated, and Suzanne will say, you tell the best stories because you get animated and all that, and it's like you help that story come alive. It's funny you mentioned hellions. I automatically think of Brad and I. You would probably agree with that. You hung out with Brad for a couple hours and you're like, wow.
Oh, I love Brad.
Wow.
I don't know if he listens, but I tell you what, I'd love him to come back and actually stay for a spell, and we go do wild and fun stuff again.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's a chance. Yeah. We have so many stories. Brad's more of the guy. He's the guy that every time he tells the story, or their story is told or whatever, there's a different twist or a plot to it, and it's all meant in fun, and we've shared many moments together. Since we're telling stories, how about I close with this one?
Okay,
are you okay with that? I know we're getting close on our time. Like I said, you asked me early in the episode, do you have any stories? I share this one a lot because it has to do with being in a hurry.
Okay.
Which kind of relates to my life right now, slowing down. Don't be in such a hurry. Enjoy the precious gift of life, right? Mm-hmm. So growing up, we played sports. Football was one of the main sports that we played. I believe I was a sophomore or somewhere around there, and Brad had just graduated. I can't quite remember, but we'd always go to the high school and play mud football.
Is this the window story?
Did I share this story already?
Yeah.
When?
I don't know.
With you?
Yes.
On our podcast?
Maybe.
I don't know if I did.
Well, tell it anyway.
I'm going to tell it anyways.
Okay.
Maybe because we have new listeners.
Hey, maybe.
Yes. Well, now you ruined my story.
No, just tell it.
Okay,
I didn't ruin it.
No, I'm just kidding. So we loved playing mud football. There was a group of us that always went out, and this was on real grass. And obviously, we called it mud because it was grass that turned to mud. We tear it up. Anyways, so before we went to the football field, we were in front of the house and we were practicing our field goal. Our kicking. We were practicing our kicking game. For what? I don't know, because we didn't kick when we were playing. But we had these two pencil. I don't know what you call them. These tall trees that they were
look like pencils.
They look like pencils, and they were perfectly lined.
Okay.
And we would kick, and it was right at the house. So we're kicking, and we're hitting the top of the roof, basically. And I kicked wide right through the window. And he's like, "Oh, you're dead meat," and Mom comes out, and she's like, "What in the hell are you doing?" And then, Brad automatically, it was Bryce. He kicked it through the, whatever. You boys are going to fix that before you go anywhere. And so we go up there and we clean up the glass. Brad's ticked off at me. And I'm like, dude, we're doing it together. It's like, whatever. And so we go clean everything up and we measure. I put that in quote. the window size, and we go to Ace Hardware down the street, and he's got this old Jeep truck or whatever. He's speeding down the highway or what, and we think we measure it. We get the glass. We come back. I open the door to get out, and I'm holding it. He says, "Be careful." And as soon as he says that, I closes the door on the glass. So he breaks it, and he looks at me with this he used to get so mad. And, he had some choice words for me. Shocker. Get back in. And so we get back in. We drive up there, and he cuts it again. And we finally get back to the house, and we put it up in the window, and we put it up, and we step back, like, oh, good. And then it decides to it starts to fall.
Oh,
well, then
no.
it falls and it breaks, and we don't do anything. We just stand there and watch it. And we're like, what happened? It wasn't even close to the right size. And at this point, my mom's laughing her rear end off. And it's like, we're in a hurry. And so we measure again, and we finally, this whole thing, and people had called the house, like, where are you? Or whatever. I don't know. Anyways, and so we finally get the thing in there. And I think my mom had said a couple things like, if you had done it right in the first place or something like that. Haste makes waste.
Yes,
the whole point of the
exactly
story.
what I was thinking.
While it was funny, and we ended up going to the field and telling that story to the other guys, and they're like, you guys are a bunch of idiots, So I found a picture of our house growing up. I put it somewhere. I put it in a file, but those trees were in that picture because we had removed them after a certain time, and automatically thought of that. Kicking wide right, breaking the window, 4 trips to Ace Hardware, Mom yelling at us, Brad yelling at me.
Well, again, and as you tell that story, in my mind I can visualize it, but I also hear the fun, the laughter, the teasing. It wasn't at that time funny, but now, and that's, that brings comedy, laughter, and I think that's where you go back to the enjoyment of life.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. Like I said, there's a lot of things that come of that story. I mean, there's a lesson, there's humor, and it's going to go on forever because Brad shares it and I share it, and I told it to Braddock's, and it's just,
Oh yeah.
So, and Brian, he's privy to that story. He was waiting at the field for us. So, anyways,
well, shall we wrap up our story?
Let's
for
wrap
today?
up our story for today.
So tell stories, enjoy life, share the memories, share a purpose, a drive, a meaning to make life better for you and those around you.
Amen, brother.
Well, then we'll carry on our story somewhere else that find somebody who hasn't heard the window story.
Yes.
All right. Well, until next time, I'm Rod.
I'm Bryce.
See ya.
Bye.